Did you know that when most people think of Medusa, they're only getting 1/3 of the story? The snake-haired monster who could turn people to stone wasn't alone in her terrifying existence. She had two sisters who were equally deadly, equally feared, and arguably even more powerful than the famous Gorgon herself. Welcome to the forgotten world of ancient Greek mythology, where the stories we think we know often hide deeper, more complex truths. In the bustling city-states of ancient Greece, from Athens to Sparta, storytellers would gather crowds to share tales that weren't just entertainment. These myths served as moral lessons, explanations for natural phenomena, and ways to understand the mysterious forces that governed human existence. Today, we're diving into one of mythology's most misunderstood families. The Gorgon sisters represent far more than just monsters in ancient Greek culture. They embody primal fears, divine punishment, and the thin line between beauty and horror that fascinated the ancient mind. Meet Stheno and Euryale, Medusa's older sisters, whose names have been lost to time, while their youngest sibling became a household name. Unlike Medusa, these two sisters were born as immortal monsters from the very beginning. They didn't suffer a tragic transformation like their famous sister. They were created as eternal guardians of the boundaries between the mortal and divine worlds. Stheno, whose name means forceful or strong, was considered the most vicious of the three sisters. Ancient texts describe her as the most murderous, with an insatiable appetite for violence that made even other monsters tremble. Her strength was legendary, capable of crushing bronze shields with her bare hands and moving faster than the wind itself. Euryale, meaning wide wandering, possessed a voice so terrifying that her screams could shatter stone and drive mortals insane. When Perseus killed Medusa, it was Euryale's earth-shaking wails that nearly prevented his escape. Her cries could be heard across entire islands, warning of danger and calling for vengeance against those who dared disturb the natural order. But here's where the story gets truly fascinating. These sisters weren't always monsters. According to the poet Ovid, they were once beautiful maidens who served as priestesses in Athena's temple. The transformation into Gorgons wasn't random divine cruelty. It was a punishment for a violation of sacred space that shook the very foundations of divine law. The most famous version tells us that Medusa was assaulted by Poseidon within Athena's temple. But the sisters stood by her, and in the complex moral landscape of Greek mythology, their loyalty was seen as complicity. Athena's rage transformed all three sisters, but she made Medusa mortal as a form of mercy, while condemning the other two to eternal monstrous existence. This punishment reveals something profound about ancient Greek values. The sisters' transformation represents the consequences of disrupting divine order, but it also shows how victims can become symbols of the very crimes committed against them. Their monstrous forms serve as eternal reminders of violation and injustice. Living on the island of Sarpedon, far beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Western Ocean, the Gorgon sisters created a realm of terror that protected the world's edge. Ancient sailors would tell stories of hearing Euryale's screams carried on ocean winds, warning them away from forbidden waters. Their physical appearance was the stuff of nightmares. Bronze hands that could tear through armor, golden wings that blocked out the sun, serpents for hair that hissed warnings of approaching death, and tusks like those of wild boars. But most terrifying of all were their eyes. While Medusa's gaze turned victims to stone, her sisters' stares could drive mortals mad with terror or stop their hearts with pure fear. The ancient Greeks understood these monsters as more than just scary stories. The Gorgons represented the untamable aspects of feminine power, the consequences of divine anger, and the protective barriers that kept mortals from venturing into realms meant for gods alone. When Perseus embarked on his famous quest to kill Medusa, he wasn't just facing one monster. He was challenging an entire system of divine guardianship. The hero's success required gifts from multiple gods: Hermes' winged sandals, Athena's reflective shield, and Hades' helmet of invisibility. Even with divine assistance, Perseus could only defeat the mortal sister, while the immortal ones remained forever beyond mortal reach. The aftermath of Medusa's death reveals another layer to this story. While Perseus escaped with his prize, Stheno and Euryale's grief transformed them into even more terrifying beings. Their mourning for their sister became a force of nature itself, their combined rage reshaping the very landscape around their island home. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the Gorgon sisters lies in their role as protectors. Despite their monstrous appearance and deadly powers, they served as guardians of sacred boundaries. Ancient temples often featured Gorgon imagery, not to frighten worshippers, but to protect holy spaces from those who would defile them. This protective symbolism extended beyond religious contexts. Greek warriors painted Gorgon faces on their shields, believing the sisters' power would turn away enemy weapons. The famous Aegis of Zeus himself bore Medusa's image, transforming her death into eternal protection for the king of gods. The story of the forgotten Gorgon sisters teaches us about the complexity of ancient Greek moral thinking. These weren't simple monsters to be slain by heroes. They were tragic figures whose monstrous forms resulted from circumstances beyond their control, yet they found purpose in their transformed existence. Modern psychology has found fascinating parallels in the Gorgon myth. The sisters represent different aspects of trauma response. Medusa's petrifying gaze as emotional numbness, Stheno's violence as explosive anger, and Euryale's wails as overwhelming grief. Their story speaks to timeless human experiences of injustice, transformation, and survival. Today, while Medusa's image appears on everything from luxury fashion to political symbols, her sisters remain largely forgotten. Yet their story enriches our understanding of Greek mythology's sophisticated moral landscape. They remind us that ancient myths weren't simple tales of good versus evil, but complex explorations of justice, power, and the consequences of divine will. The next time you see Medusa's snake-haired visage, remember Stheno and Euryale. Remember that behind every famous myth lies a deeper story, and that the ancient Greeks understood something we're still learning: that monsters aren't born, they're made. And sometimes the most terrifying creatures are also the most tragic. For more powerful and dangerous women's stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Mythic Narratives.